Welcome to the 4 F's with Jeff.
Welcome back to the 4Fs podcast. My guest today is David Porter. David is currently a senior executive with the global technology company ServiceNow. He's had an amazing career both in sales, operations, and in the military. The crazy thing about this interview is that we barely scratched the surface on his work in tech. We did cover a lot of other topics, though. We talked about engineered failure, Fieldcraft, and the power of knowing what you don't want to be. David shares some great lessons about broken bones, broken surfboards, and the kind of solitude that forces you to face yourself. He even shares how a bottle of multivitamins nearly derailed his military career and how a spreadsheet ultimately saved it. This episode is a first for me. We have to do a part 2. The good news is that if you listen to this episode and you have questions that you really want to ask David, reach out. Send me an email. Reach out at the links below. We'll see if we can work them into part 2. In the meantime, enjoy this episode with David Porter. And as always, if you find yourself with no more F's to give, let me know. Maybe you can borrow one of mine. So, let's go into it. David, thanks for joining. Great to see you as usual. The podcast always starts the same question, which is, tell us about yourself. Where are you from? Where you grow up? The whole thing.
So I grew up in Southern California. I grew up probably about 15 minutes inland from the coast in North County, San Diego. So the town was called Escondido. I grew up with my grandmother and my mom, 4 brothers and 2 sisters. So there was do the math, it was, yeah. And so, and it was like Lord of the Flies, at times, but, because my grandmother, my family is from Spain. My grandmother, they immigrated here. And so, and my mother speaks Spanish. She taught English as a second language. My grandmother spoke Spanish in the house. I didn't. So I grew up with two Spanish women. Which was a great thing. And I think it helped shape who I am today. But it was also, we ran from my grandmother a lot, and had her chase us around with food because we deserved it. And so. But yeah, grew up there to high school, totally because my mom was working and my grandmother was there. We completely took advantage of that, setting things on fire, breaking windows, it was chaotic. Like I said, Lord of the Flies. But but from an early age, it was, we were kind of, I didn't need as many friends when I was young because I had so many people in the family. Like we were like a baseball team almost all together. So it was really good. That was really good. We had as kids, especially getting into high school. I've learned that, and I tell my daughters this. I have 2 daughters. We don't know what we want to be when we grow up very, very well. We think we do, but we're actually a lot better about knowing what we don't want to be. Right. And so I learned a lot of things that I didn't want to do would be by doing dumb stuff as a young kid. So it's deductive reasoning. You take some of that out, and then the next thing you have is something closer to actually what you want to do or be. So there was a lot of trial and error when we were young kids, and I learned what I didn't want to do. So
I think you just described what it's like growing up in a big family really, really well. I come from a family, not exactly the same, but I have 5 brothers and 2 sisters. And the Lord of the Flies reference is fairly accurate. You learn a lot of interpersonal dynamics when there's when there's that many folks running around. So yeah, I love that a lot.
Yeah, it's when it's non-excludable, right? You can't stop everyone in the house from going to the dinner table, right? Yeah. But there's limited resources. The food on the table, rules emerge, right? It's like black markets. It's the same thing, and gangs and these rules emerge. It's the same way when you're surfing in the water. You can't exclude people from going there, but there's a limited resource called waves. And so what emerges is this hierarchy out there, and there's rules. You don't do this, you don't do that. That's people fight on the beach and stuff like that. Same thing happens in a big family. These rules emerge because there's no policemen there if mom and grandma aren't there, right? So there's this hierarchy and things that I look back at some of that. And I just laugh about how some of the things emerged that they did. I have had a very econ based kind of mind, so you're gonna hear probably a lot of that.
Very well described. So you say you have an econ based mind. So you ended up, we're in Southern California, why would you ever leave? So nice down there. You got surf, you got everything you need, but you mentioned that you have an econ based mind. So was that one of those things that kind of developed just over time? You mentioned how you learned how a lot about what you don't like, what you don't want to be as you were young. And at some point you realize like, gosh, I really like this kind of resonates with me. And so you end up going studying econ. Is that kind of how it went down, or
I wish it was that easy. Yeah, there's a lot
never
more
is? Right?
between. There's a lot in between that. I barely graduated high school, and I don't say this out loud, but I had a 1.9, and they weren't going to let me walk. Because we were surfing. I mean, we were at the beach every single day that we could be. Even when we shouldn't have been at the beach, we were there. And in the summertime, growing up, like we would literally make palm frond huts and live in them, like three or four of us, right? Just because we live on the beach with our boards, and we go up to the state campgrounds at night and go pull bologna and water bottles. I'm not saying this is the right thing to do, but this is what we did. We'd go back, and they would go home every couple of weeks and grab some food and go back, and so we kind of lived like that. And and so I was bored at school, and we were just surfing all the time. The crew that I grew up with, including my brothers, like we were at the beach. We hardly even came home in the summertime. It was crazy. I don't like my mom must have just, well, she had so many of us, I mean, she's like, if I lost a couple of them, I got six more, I mean, I'm just kidding. No, she's a great mom. She loves us. But, and so I barely graduated high school. I'd have my mom kind of go into the office and throw her Spaniard around. And immediately, like within less than a month after I graduated high school, I'm like, I want to go to the North Shore of Oahu and just be a surfer. Yeah. And so I immediately I sold my car and moved out there. Boom, $500. Thought I was rich. Bought a ticket for $150 back. In 1995 when I graduated,
Man,
which it seems like yesterday, but I guess it's not. Went out there and had $250 essentially in my pocket, and found a place that for $250 a month, right? I was living on the beach on the North Shore, and
for $250
yeah,
a month on the beach, North Shore.
well, it was right on the northeast tip. But the thing was, it was an 8-bedroom house with
Wow.
16 people living in it, college students, people. So and
Okay.
it was and I went there with essentially nothing in my pocket, and except for my surfboard and a little bit of money and some clothes, because I'm like, I'm not coming back. Like, I'm gonna make this thing work, right? And like that was a huge experience, because I had to find a job. Here I'm this long blonde haired, how believe it or not, I had long blonde hair.
Nice.
I was the howliest, so I stuck out like a sore thumb, right, in the local population. Um,
The Hallies, that's like a slang term for locals, right? Essentially like not from around here. Is that what that means?
yeah, howly is the reference to like
Okay.
a white person, wire,
Okay.
and that was crazy. I mean, I could probably spend 10 hours talking about my time like through that. I mean, I found a job. Like ended up working um, on a sod farm on the side of a mountain, right on the
Like a
north.
sod, like grass sod?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I mean, that was a wild experience in itself. There was a guy whose name we called him TC because we couldn't pronounce his name because he was straight off the boat from China, right? He even wore one of those like quintessential, like those like big brimmed hats that came down, and we would be picking nut grass all day long, and or someone would come to buy it, we'd cut it, and all he would say to us, I think the only words he knew is, you waste time, you waste money. So we would just be there like like picking grass, like nut grass. But I met a couple of really like good local guys who were good surfers, and I became friends with them. We ended up roommating and stuff together later on. But that was a really great experience. I ended up like working with one of the landscapers who could come and get grass. They hired me, and so I was a landscape. Like, I was mowing lawns, I was planting trees, doing all that along the North Shore, and then surfing as much as I possibly could. Yeah, yeah. And I thought I was like living. Why would I ever change this life? I found the gold. Little did I know that, like, you know everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face, I think, is what Mike Tyson says. And I was surfing on the South Shore where a big swell came in, so we went out there, and it was the first big swell of the South season. So we came from the North Shore, me and my buddies, all really good surfers. And next thing I know, I wake up on the beach, my chest is being pumped by lifeguards, and I'm like in pain. And all I have is my leash on me with no board. And I'm like pretty beat up, and my knee was just killing me. So to this day, I had amnesia for about 4 hours. I didn't even know where I lived. I got hit in the head probably pretty bad. I know I did because I was full of staples. Someone had paddled me in. They found me face down in the water, threw me on their board, paddled me in, dumped me off in front of the lifeguards, and then paddled back out. All I had was my leash on me. So for all I
Wow.
know, someone dropped in on me and hit my leg, or I pissed someone off and they punched me and twisted my leg. I don't know. Till this day, I don't even know what happened. I just know that it's someone essentially, I think, saved my life.
Wow.
Yeah,
Some unknown
and
person out there. That's
yeah,
wild.
yeah. I don't even know what happened. That's how hard I get hit. And I guess when you get hit that hard in the head and you're in water, like your respiratory shuts down. So I didn't breathe in a lot of water. So I didn't have but when I started to come to, I was kind of piecing things together, and they really, my buddies, like for you for hours. And they're like, what happened? And I'm like, I don't know. They're like, he needs to get in an ambulance, and they're like, don't do it, man. Like, it's going to cost you like $300 to ride in the ambulance alone. Right. They're like, and they're like, we'll take him to the hospital on the North Shore, which is like the Kahuka hospital. And so I get in there and I'm just like, my leg is killing me. I'm like, oh, but I'm also bleeding pretty bad. They take me to the hospital in Kahuku. And it's one of those places, like, person who checks you in is the same person who gives you, like, who stitches you up,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. So I get staples and stitches all on my face, and I'm like, my knee is the thing that's hurting. And they're like, we'll give you an x-ray. And they're like, don't do it, man. X-rays are expensive. So here's the group I'm hanging out with, right? Don't do it. Wait, let's just put ice on it. So make a long story short, my knee was stuck at like a 45-degree angle. I couldn't go up or down, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And they were like, we're gonna figure this out. Like, after a week, I can't move. I'm like crushing around. And so they give me a bunch of whiskey and try to smash my leg down. I pass out. Like, I'm just like in so much pain. And so I decide, like, I gotta fly home because I have no insurance. And this to the school piece. Right? If I fly home, because now I know there's something wrong. More wrong than this is just a twisted knee, and it's going to get better. So I fly home because my mother was a school teacher. She taught English as a second language across all the grades. And you get to be on what I learned is you get to be on your parents' insurance as a teacher in California till you're 26, as long as you're going to college full time. So I flew home and immediately registered for 12 units at the community college that was coming up. Like, it was the middle of summer. It was coming up in like a month, and went and got an x-ray, right? Because now I got insurance, I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. Big deal. Canceling all that stuff, had to write back. Well, I had broken my femur, shattered my kneecap, and the bone was stuck in my kneecap. So I couldn't go either direction. Right. So I had to have surgery, and I broke the end of my femur, cracked it. Not a big deal, right? I mean, it was a big deal, but I'm glad I did that and didn't try to, like, wait. So, I mean, I had these idiot friends of mine trying to straighten my leg out, and I had a broken femur, and my kneecap was shattered like 6 places. I tore 3 tendons or something. Like, here we are, like beach bum idiots trying to straighten a broken leg out. We didn't even know, right? That's how dumb we were. But I went to school.
You end up not canceling the 12 credits, and you're like, I guess I'm going to do this now.
I had to go through therapy. I had to learn to walk again on it. And the idiot that I was, so towards the end of that semester, I went there, and I'm like, the best thing is that I got my PE credit. I was in handicap PE. I know it sounds crazy. I would just go to the pool and sit there, and I got like full grip. Anyway, I actually did really well, and I learned, like, an important lesson. Like, maybe I could go to school, because I'm like, I'm not going to college. Like, why would I go to college? Like, living the dream right now. So it got me interested. But my problem was, as soon as I could learn to walk again, towards the end of that semester, I go, I'm out of here. I'm going back to Hawaii. And this was a pivotal moment, I think, in my life. It was the best thing that happened to me. Is I was completely, what I thought was, in love with a local girl, right? If we wanted to get married, I was an idiot, like 20-year-old at this time, right? Or something like that, 21-year-old. And she dumps me while my legs broke and stuff. And so, and so now I'm devastated, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what should I do? Well, I said, I'm going to go do something totally different, just take my mind off it. And so I find a cattle ranch in northern Arizona that's hiring a ranch hand. And I go, okay, I'll go do that. I just need to I need to go clear my head. struck in the ditch, or like
Broken heart, broken leg.
broken leg was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Ended up being probably one of the best things. So I go up there, I pretend like I know what I'm doing. I know how to ride horses and saddle them and stuff. I get up to northern Arizona, and I got long blonde hair, and I don't even know how to put a saddle on a horse. Luckily, they didn't just kick me out of there. Right? So, but I ended up working on the ranch for almost a year and a half. And I was the guy, there was 1,500 head of cattle. There was 100 square miles of this ranch. So we're talking huge, up by the Grand Canyon, all the way, down. It was a really big ranch. So at any time you had 3,500 cows, right? Moving from these giant pastures. So, and a lot of it was wilderness areas. So I would be the guy, they park a trailer. They gave me 2 horses and a four-wheeler. And I would prep the next pasture, which on a horse, it could take you days to go around the one pasture. And I would fix all the barbed wire. I would clean out the cattle guards, prep everything. And, a lot of it was in wilderness area too, where you couldn't drive vehicles, which is why I had horses. And I would be out in the middle, like and the rancher every 2 weeks would come drop food off in front of my trailer. And if I got to see him, then I was there. They'd drop hay and food. And so I'm out there. And then when it was time to gather the cows, we had all the cowboys, and they'd, bring, sub some cowboys from the ranch. So we'd push all the cows in, and that could take like a week or two. And then I would go to the next one, and I would prep it. And so I'd be living out. Sometimes I wouldn't see a human for almost a month. It was one of the most wonderful things and one of the strangest things at the same time. Here I'm like 21 years old, up in the beautiful, up in the beautiful, up in Flagstaff, Arizona. Like, I mean, it was completely amazing. But what I learned is I like to talk to humans every now and then. There were no phones back then, like we didn't have, there wasn't cell phones. I mean, they had like those big suitcase phones that you pull out, whoops, and click back in and do that kind of thing. But I didn't have one of those. So, but it was it taught me, I'd always worked, right? I had a paper route since I was from 11 to 15. It was a tough job, and it forced me to kind of figure some stuff out by myself. And I caught myself in some really situations that I look back and that was probably one of the most formative and interesting jobs I ever had. I had a horse run away from me because I was an idiot and didn't, tether it up when I was fixing a fence because I thought we had an understanding. Yeah. And I'm in a wilderness area. There's no one around. And I spent 2 days trying to find the horse, sleeping under trees and stuff like that, until I came up with a way that I found a coffee can and I put some rocks in it because I used to feed it grain every night. So I'd shake the can, sort of just walking around the woods, shaking a can for 2 days. I heard it. It came running towards me. Its saddle was upside down and broke. This thing just gave me the middle finger proverbially and just ran off. Stuff like that, right? You know what I mean? It's like, what do you do? I'm by myself. I don't even know how to get a hold of anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, what an experience though, man. I mean, well, I like what you're describing here as an opportunity that's disguised as a challenge. There's this thing in front of you and you're like, it's a lot of work, but you're now also describing it looking back as really, really formative. I mean, is there anything to just being alone with your thoughts for such a long period of time to really just figure things out? I mean,
I think there's a lot of value to that. I think it was Jordan Peterson who said, we all know if you just sit on the end of your bed by yourself, right, in the morning, I'm paraphrasing now, and you think about the things that you need to change in your life, you'll know exactly what those are. If you just sit and think, hey, what do I need to do? What could I do better? What are the things that are holding me back, right? And most of the time, the things that are holding you back are the things that you want to give up the least, And so, and I say that because when you're by yourself, you have a lot of time to think. And I've talked to my horses a lot, but it forces you to think through problems, and it doesn't mean you're going to come out with the right thing, but you dissect everything 100 times over. And I think there's some value to being alone. And I think it's not meditation in the sense of meditation in the yogi kind of way, but there's a bit of that there too. And to be alone and not have anybody to distract you, you actually start to learn kind of number one, how weird your brain is sometimes, and what you actually think you care about and what actually doesn't matter. So I think there's a lot of value there.
Oh man, that's really well said. I like the way that you ended up about how there's just something to figuring out what exactly you value, because maybe back on the beach or somewhere else, you might have valued different things. And not that those things weren't true, not that you didn't value them, but looking at it now, like, okay, this is really what's important to me, and spending a prolonged period of time. That's really cool. Okay, so you're on the cattle ranch in northern Arizona.
Yeah. So I decided, you know what? I'm done with this ranch life. And it was great experience. It to this day is probably one of the most instrumental things that you don't realize it at the time. When you look back, you start to see the things that sort of piece you together to who you are today. Not that we're finite at now, but that shaped things that come in the future and probably shape what I'm doing now and will always shape what I do in the future. Right? It's ingredients of life. I had to work my way up. The best thing too was that I did so poorly in high school, and I don't think it was because we were surfers. I was bored. Again, Lord of the Flies. There wasn't much to stop us from doing what we felt like we wanted to do, right, wrong, or indifferent. And so I went back and so I had to start at these basic levels like Math 25. Right? The only one you actually got college credit for is when you hit like Math 100. So I had to work my way up, from the very bottom and some of these things, which was honestly, I am so grateful for that, because I learned that in college, and this is in life too, if you sit up front, you smile when the professor walks around, you raise your hand every now and then, that's 70% right there.
So
That's a
true,
C.
yeah.
Go to office hours and act like, I'm not saying that like you don't have to put work in, but that's part of the game, right? I hate to say it, is be interested, smile, be additive every now and then. And like, but what I started doing is I started learning like, okay, that's 70% of the game. I just have to, now I get to do the work. And I really started like, to learn that like, okay, I could do this. This isn't how smart are you? This is, in the military, and we'll get to that, was very similar. They provide a path for you to succeed. They're not trying to, this is not like engineered. There's engineered failure in the military for a reason, but they want people to succeed and move in these organizations, right? It's not like let's stump the chump and see how many people we can fail out, right? And once I learned like, oh, there's a process here, and the process really isn't that hard. You just have to put in the time and the effort. And what I learned, because I hated math, I learned that I loved math. And so I ended up like getting out of that, I had actually got married to my ex-wife at the time. I got accepted to ASU because I really loved science. I started like loving microbiology and stuff. Thought I was going to go into science. I even thought pre-med and all sorts of stuff. And I got accepted to ASU, and I went there for the first semester. And I remember walking up to my apartment one afternoon, and I grabbed the handle after I unlocked it, and it burned the handle mark in my hand. This is like 120 degrees, 115 to 18 degrees. And I said, this ain't for me. And so I can't I'm not doing this, And so there goes, so I said, well, what do I want to do? I want to, if I can't do that, what can I get into at Cal State School? And so like economics. Awesome. I'll do that. I'll go from working in a lab with a hairnet to working in a cubicle. Perfect. And so I went and, I actually finished my undergraduate degree in economics and loved it. Like loved the math. Like got into linear algebra. Like I didn't realize I was like, I'm not saying I'm really analytical, but I certainly became like I fell in love with the analytics, because to me it's like very logic based, and I kind of went that direction. And when I got out, I said, because I was,
which feels old at the time, and when you're compared to kids that are already done and everyone's finished at 22, that feels, yeah, I get it.
But I also caught on to something really well. Every time I would go to Thanksgiving or a family function, I'm on teas, blah blah blah. I'd be like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm going to school." "Oh, good job. We're so proud of you." And I said, "Wait, I'm getting a societal pass here by going to school. I don't I don't have to go and do all that boring stuff like go to work at 6 and hate my life and all that stuff. So I'm gonna keep going to school then, like because I'm surfing, I'm working at restaurants, I'm a valet captain, I'm like, and so I went and started a master's degree, a master's of ed, and because I'm like, oh, my dad was in education, my mom was in education, my grandma was in education, I got a couple years to continue surfing and killing it. Well, I got to the end of that master's degree, and I learned it, as I was sitting there in high school classes watching this. I was like, I may one day love my kids, but I don't know if I love everybody else's the same, And the and maybe it was just my experience here in Southern California, and I think it's still this way. Like some of like the way that they were treating the teachers and stuff, and I could understand Spanish enough to hear what was happening. I'm like, this is not for me. Like I'll just I finished that up, and I'm like, I'd applied to a PhD program in economics at Irvine, and a bunch of like I was taking the every standardized test you could think of, right? The LSAT. Like I went on this whole spree. I would, everything. So I got the first thing I get back is an MBA program accepted me at Cal State. And I go, I'll take it, and so I jumped into the MBA program, and it was great. I probably, looking back, I may have done something a little bit different because yeah, there's a lot of value in that program, but I still think it's too general. I would have liked, looking back, I would have specialized a little bit more, but nonetheless, it was great, and it's what kicked me in to my path to the military, which I never thought in a million years it would happen. So I sat in those cohorts. You're in 2 years with the same MBA cohort, and in that cohort, because in San Diego you have the SEAL teams, half the SEAL teams are here on the West Coast, and I had probably three SEALs who were like, some of them were injured and getting out, some were getting out, and in the military, you can take the time and you can go and do these type of things, especially as an officer or whatever. Like there's a lot of ways that you can go to school. And naturally I kind of just like, for whatever reason, buddied up with these guys because I loved listening to their stories about buds and like how hard it was, and we've all seen the movies, and and so, and they were great guys too. And I was just like, wow, man, that sounds hard, right? And I grew up like I didn't have my aunt was in the military. I think my grandfather was, but he's passed away before. So I had like there was not a lot of military stuff in my family. But one day and I was getting in really good shape at the time. CrossFit was in. I was like CrossFitting all the time. Like I don't do that anymore, but thank goodness. Although like it's a great thing to do. But that's where I was in my life. I was biking 15 miles to the campus every day. I just was kind of on this health kick. So they asked me, they said, hey, because we're in this program, we have to go down every couple months. We have to run the buds course, and we have to do why don't you come down with us? Because you're all, and run the buds course. So I go down with them, and they let me, the cadre there and the leadership, you can bring him in, and like he could do the PT test with you, do your things that you got to do. And you know what? I actually did really well. Actually, I think the SEALs will hate this, but I actually beat some of the guys, and I wasn't there and I remember I was sitting in where Buds has all the new sailors come in as they're going through Buds, and I was just kind of walking through and like looking, just watching all the discipline and stuff, and all of a sudden there was I walked out of there, and it my mind was like, oh shit, like man, there's something interesting about this, and I go, it seems really hard too. And there's so many unknown unknowns. And but what turned me off is some of the leadership there. Like they were playing this like kind of macho SEAL thing, like get on the ground and do push-ups and stuff. And at the time, like I'm like this is like, come on, I'm a civilian. You know what I mean? Like cut the crap. We can go have a beer afterwards. We don't need to play this game. And I grew up, I swam clubs, swimming. I played water polo for 4 years. I surfed. I'm the idiot. I probably should have thought about being a SEAL. I would have probably been a better SEAL than anything else. But I started in here. I'm about 8 months from my MBA being over, and I just started like secretly kind of in my own thing, shopping around all the special operations, because I'm like, I certainly if I'm going to go do something hard, I'm like, because I said when I get out of this thing, I'm like 80-90% of everybody in this MBA course, they're going back to their jobs at the biotech companies, at the bank, at all these things, and I'm like, I don't think I'm ready to do that, right? You see, I've been dodging life a lot, along the way. This path, figuring out how can I keep having fun while having some kind of movement and a trajectory that everybody thinks is good, including myself.
It's awesome.
And so I started to shop around. I like special forces, like the Green Berets, blah, 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 blah. And at this point, like my emphasis in my MBA was game theory, right, in decision making. And so I'm just like analyzing everything like an idiot. Yep, it was good. Again, I'm taking every standardized test on the planet you could think, just because like I'm there. I'm taking the postal test, like anything, trying to figure out what I want to do. And so I in my analysis, I'm like, well, who's doing the most raids and like crazy missions and special operations right now? And it was the 75th Ranger Regiment, right? They were like, no one was touching them, not even close, on their night action raids for joint special operations and special operations. And I go, that okay. It piqued my interest, and so I kind of went down that, started reading every book on Rangers I could and stuff like that. And I'm like, that sounds crazy, right? And so I went to I rode my bike up after school one day to the Army recruiter, and I walked in and I said, yeah, I want a option 40 contract. Like, how do you know that? I'm like, because I'm not walking in here and having you guys turn me into a dishwasher, you know, a cook when I don't want to be a cook. And so I knew what I was coming in there for.
And the option 40 contract is the contract that you need if you want to go to Ranger selection.
So yeah. So
Okay.
you'll go through combat, depending on, there's different, what they call MOSs, right? Because Rangers don't just have shooters. They have cooks too, right? They have logistic guys and stuff like that. So I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I want to go like jump out of airplanes and blow stuff up and shoot guns and all that. Like, I just want to go, like, oh, let's go do the hard thing. They're like, dude, it's near to impossible to get an option 40 contract, because that puts you through combat school after basic training. It puts you into airborne school, so you get your jump wings. Then it puts you into Ranger assessment selection, and then from there, once you get past selection, you have to pass other schools to continue to stay in that organization. And so, I said, well, call me when the one shows up. And they're like, you should be an officer, man. Like you have degrees, you have this. I go, no, I already went down that line. Like, it takes too long to get into like the special operations. You got to go do your time. You got to go off to Canada school. You got to go do your time as a PL in the big army or whatever it is. And then you got to go through selection. And then 2 years later, you get kicked out to the big army again. And like, I'm like, I just want to go, I want to go straight in. Like, and so, of course, they call me up like a week later, like, oh, wild, we got an option 40 contract, right? If anybody listens to this who's thinking about going in the army, think about what I just said. Like, stick to what you want and do not deviate from that, right? It'll end up showing up at some point. But and so so I got the option 40 contract. I took my ASVAB test and did all that, and met all the criteria. Did the dirty little secret, right? And this is like, hope that VA doesn't say anything to listen to this, but like they're like, have you ever broken a bone or anything in your life? Never. Nope.
That was, well, you had temporary amnesia, came back. It must have come back just at that moment, I'm sure.
I didn't remember. I don't remember. Yeah. I can't recall. That's what it is. I can't recall. And so I signed the contract. Right. And at that time, like, I was married. I had I had like a 2-year-old and like a new baby. Yeah, maybe 2.5 and like 6 months old. And so, my wife at the time, she's like, oh my gosh, I think it'd be better if we went officer, and so on and so forth. Like, it's just better for the family. And this is 2006. So the economy is like terrible too. Right. It wasn't a driving factor, but it was like coming out, and I'm like I could barely get a job. Like I was getting job offers from Yellow Book as a salesperson selling phone books, and then trying to get people under their new digital platform, which is, yellowbook.com, right? Stuff like that. Pitney Bowes, right? Like they're like selling for Pitney Bowes and mail machines and stuff like that. Like, I was like, right. So, so I'm like, and I there's probably 3 people in this world who know this next story. And it floored me. They said, listen, we got a waiver because they weren't hiring. Like, it was hard to get into OCS, Officer Candidate School. Time I had to get a waiver. It's got to get signed, blah, blah, blah. And then you go, and they're like three people in the whole area of like the Southwest, or like, it's like California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico. Like, that's a region for recruiting. Like, 3 people got it, and you got one of them to go in front of this board of generals or whatever. I don't know anything about military etiquette at this time. they're going to go through like a board, like it's very structured. They'll teach you how to do everything, answer the questions. Like, this is going to be a home run for you. And then you can have a choice if you want to keep your option 40 or if you want to go down the office. So I go up there and there's me and two other people sitting on the couch, and they've taught me like walk in, like do your turns, you salute, this and that. And here I'm like this, like I can't hardly, I'm like look at, I must have looked like a deer in the headlights. Right? Went the wrong way. I think I went like that. Called the lady Miss instead of ma'am, who was the 2-star general. Totally screwed that up. Right. But I'm like, come on, like we're civilians. You know what I mean? Like they get probably see us. Went through a bunch of questions and they really hammering me. So we all come out, and then each one of us go in afterwards. And I was the third one to go in, and the first two came out and they're like happy, high fiving each other. I'm like, oh wow, it's like Halloween today. They're just giving out OCS like packets out to people. I go in there and they sit me down and they said, no, I will never forget this. They said, you are the worst candidate we have ever seen in our entire life. And we all think that you should not even join the military, let alone you will not get an officer, like you will not be an officer. They said, we recommend that you don't even go in. We don't think you're fit in the enlisted corps. They said that to me. And it literally, my jaw hit the floor. But I'm like, okay. I made sure I said, thank you, miss. And I walked out the door. And I came home. I didn't even tell my wife. I said, I'm going to keep that one inside. Because I was like, I was like, number one, I was kind of embarrassed, but I've failed a million times at a million things. But it was just, I did, like, they were like, you're the scum of the earth. Like, don't even join the military. We don't want you in here. Certainly not an officer. So, but I was able to get back at them in a little way. So I'm like, I'm going all in on the option 40. I don't want to be an officer anyway. I see what they do. That's good for a lot of people. It's needed. I just want to go jump out of a plane, go do something hard for some years and then see where I want to be from there. So they had this in Huntington Beach. They had it was called the Iron Warrior competition for everybody who in the next month or two were going into the military from all of the Southwest. So again, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, California, all came down. I mean, it must have been 5,000 people on the beach. They shut the beach down in Huntington Beach, and you ran a mile. They had all these physical things. They had all these other things, and so I went up there and did that. And we're all standing there at the very end, and they go, and there's newspapers and radios there, and they go, and the Iron Warrior is David Porter. Like I beat everybody. Like, and I'm not patting myself on the back. I was like stunned. Like, like I won the whole thing, right? And at that point, I was like all of that worked out. It's way too much, and so I was really fit because I knew I was going into selection. And I thought like I got to get as fit as I can. So you just have it, Here the old guy, the 25-year-old or whatever, I was at the time, like won the thing, and so they tell me to come up, and I'm like. I wasn't even listening. I was just like looking at the waves or something like that. And people are like, hey, man, that's you. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I run up there. There's the news is there, everything. And the three people who are going to give me my award are the three people who told me not to ever be in, that should not join the military. They're the ones that are handing me the awards. And I remember I walked up there and I got I had all this stuff and the surfboard, they gave me you want a surfboard. And I remember like they go through it and I remember me. And then they said, well, turn around and hold your plaque up and your surfboard with them for a newspaper. And I just walked off the stage. That was probably not the right thing to do. Like it was a little bit of a poke in the eye, but that was like, I was dumb. I was young and dumb, but it was my only way to get back.
Bold move.
It was a bold move. Yeah. I just pretended I didn't hear them.
That's awesome. Yeah. It probably felt a little bit good at the moment, right? I mean, you're just like, these guys that probably felt really personal, man, when they're just you're not even fit to join.
Those failures, right? Like, I'm not even going to call it a failure, but that turn of events would have changed my life if I would have gone as an officer. I don't know where that path or that decision node would go, but I certainly know I wouldn't be here right now where I am today. I would almost with certainty, I would say, which I can't probabilistically like say that I couldn't be here, but it would be the chance would be very low, extremely low to where I'm at today. Right. And so I graduated with my MBA, and 2.5 weeks later, I got shipped off to boot camp in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Wild. That's an amazing story, man. I, yeah, there are a couple of things that stand out so far that we've been talking about before we go to the next spot here. It seems like you have like an ability or just something within you to kind of see a chapter in your in your growth development or whatever, and just be like, okay, that chapter's done and now I'm moving on. And you talked about, there's this time in my life when I was surfing and living on the beach, and then that chapter was over, and then I'm going to move on, I'm going to go to Hawaii, and then that chapter's over and I'm going to come, like, I think, I don't know, I think that's kind of unique. I don't know, I can't speak for anyone else except myself, but I, like, frankly have a hard time moving on with different chapters. I kind of want to hang on to these places that are comfortable, because it'd be really easy to be like, yeah, this is cool. Like, I'm living on the beach, or, I'm working at this ranch and it's decent and my needs are met. And, like, I don't know. Is there something to that? Like, knowing when a chapter is done and then when it's time to kind of move on?
I wish I had an answer. These are the criteria for me for my exit strategy, right? But I don't think that's not how I approach it. I mean, there's a couple things, I guess I'll unpack that. One of my one of my mantras for me is like, I am going to do something regardless of what it is until I'm not having fun doing it anymore, and then I'm going to change directions and find the next thing that is bringing me value and utility in my life, right? It's not a perfect science, but I do believe life is short. There's a really big cost associated with leaving this comfortable area I have right here. Scares me a little bit, because it should. Because if your needs are met, Maslow tells you that you probably are in a good place, and like you're going up the pyramid, and like, why change that? Changing that induces risk into the system, and when there's risk in the system, the future is unknown, and it's hard for us to think about the how you think more about the unknown outcomes, and so it fogs the decision point in the present, right? And that's good. I don't think that's a bad thing. However, people swing it too far to the left, right? Because I may not be happy at my job, but you know what? It pays pretty well. And, I have good insurance. We like where we live. If that startup that, I kind of like drawn to, if I go do that, like, look at all the risk and stuff, there is nothing that has a greater cost, in my opinion, of being 20 years later, looking back going like, damn it, why didn't I try that? Because, and that's me. I'm not saying everybody's like that. Right. And it's not like I go like, run to anything that like seems unusually or a little uncomfortable. Especially as you get older, you have kids and stuff like that. There's other calculus in play, right? But I also think like for every success I've probably had in my life, I've probably had 100 failures or something close to that, right? I go back, like, I've made a lot of dumb decisions, but those dumb decisions have like I go back. You don't know. We're not good about knowing what we want to be when we grow up, but we're really good about knowing what we don't want to be. And I found when I wrote down, because I was laughing with my sister and a couple of my friends, we were talking about like you may have had more jobs than any human on the planet I've known, so I did it, like, I did a little equation
That's
from
a
a
good amount of
paper
jobs, man.
paper boy. Worked at Taco Bell for 6 months. Worked at J.C. Penney's. I was a valet person. I sold Pitney Bowes. I sold point of sale systems. Like, I'd almost be embarrassed, right? But I'm not, because I took a lot of stuff out of the system that I learned I didn't like. And as I got older and I started to get more mature in my thinking, not that I'm there yet, I'm still kind of like a 16-year-old boy sometimes in my head, but it helped me decide, like, yeah, don't want to do that. Yeah, don't want to do that. But it also taught me like a lot about relationships, and like I've screwed some of those over, working at a pancake house. I threw butter on someone, got fired. Don't do that. It's not good. Stuff like that. And so, yeah, but I do believe that when you decide that you want to move or you're thinking about it, like, you got to get to a place real quick, and you can't push that down in your mind, because your brain, either you're having those thoughts for a reason, right? And everybody's reason is different. Sometimes people actually are looking for increase in power and stature. Some people are looking for an increase in responsibility and new challenges. Some people want to get the hell away from the people they're working with. There's a million reasons why you're underutilized, or maybe you're over your skis and you're like, wow, I'd like to, I need it to, increase my chops somewhere else before I step up into something like this. But whatever happens, the reason you're thinking of those things, like if you try to bury that, your mind has a funny way of getting back at you by when you do those things.
I think that's so true. I think that I really like you articulate this really well, but I really like, and that really resonates with me, this idea of like when you have this thought or this feeling or something that you're just, that's kind of gnawing at you, like your mind or the universe or whatever it is has a way of like, I actually think you can either choose to run toward it, like you said, or you're going to have to face it on some other terms. It's like, you can't avoid
Yeah.
it.
Or
It's
you
going
got
to
to,
come
or
your
you
way.
got to do some backwards induction and rationalization about like why not going down that path is good for you.
That's an interesting
But
thought. Yeah.
yeah, but if you do that, you cut off that decision. I'm going back to like game theory economics, right? Like when you cut off that decision node, you others open, but you just cut off unknown decision nodes that could lead somewhere that you would never otherwise be exposed to. You're
Interesting.
minimizing
Yeah.
exposure. You're minimizing exposure and shrinking the canvas if you're afraid to do things.
That's true. I like that. So we're jumping a little bit further ahead here, but I have this, what you said about being afraid to do things and or not being afraid to do them. Yeah, we were having a conversation a while ago, and this thing, I'm paraphrasing it, but so I want to say this, and then let's come back to your story at the point in time. But I think this lends itself really well. But you were talking about how you had some opportunity in front of you, and you're like, man, I have this opportunity in front of me. You're like, and I was thinking about it, and I wasn't sure. And I started to feel like, you said, not a lot gets me scared these days. But when I realized that I was even starting to get like leaning toward that direction just a little bit, I realized, oh, I got to go do that right now. Like it's like you wanted to run toward this challenge. I thought that when you said that's like, I think that's a pretty unique attribute. And I think in two ways, one, like acknowledging it that, hey, this is me. This is the person this is how I am. I got to run toward this challenge if it's the right one. But then also then doing that, like I think those are two really unique attributes. I'm not that way. Like I know I'd like to be that way, but I'm not. And so I'm just curious if that's, an attribute you've always had or something you've developed over time, or just, I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
And to put context to it, like just to the point that you were making, we'll catch back up there. But, I was you and I knew each other back in, when we knew each other, working tech and stuff like that. But I had like a great job at Microsoft. I was a senior director. I was running all of our Air Force and Space Force business. I mean, it was almost $1 billion business. I have had really good successes there, and I had this great trajectory, right? As the at least at the time, me and one other person, the succession plan for the GM, right? Like I was one of those two people. And along came another really big tech company that we'll talk about later. And they tapped me on the shoulder, asked me to be the COO of global public sector. And I said, like, I wasn't even looking for a job. Number one, I would say I was pretty comfortable where I was at Microsoft at the time. Certainly I didn't know everything, but I could see a path. I was, at least what I thought in my mind, was well liked by the leadership there. I could see a path of progression. But then when I looked over that, I said, oh my gosh, that's like, I don't even know what a COO does, right? But it sounds like it's like I'm probably not qualified for that, right? And and I started digging into it and like owning a P&L, right? Like and having the responsibility, which includes the risk, upside and downside of a piece of an organization, is like a publicly traded company, is a big deal, right? When I say big deal, like, oh, not a big deal, but like there's a lot of risk, right? And that risk is I thought about where I was, and I said, well, you might fail, you may not. There's unknown unknowns. I'm sure just going to give it everything I got. But if I stay here and wait to learn that lesson about owning that amount of risk, I may need to be here for another 20 years. And because where I was, to own a P&L, be responsible for financial decisions and everything from head count to like all the things that encompass that. I was so many levels away from that at Microsoft. And I'm not saying that I may or may not have got there, but to get to that pressure cooker, which is where diamonds are made, where you learn the most, right? That's Thoughts of a Philosophical Fighter Pilot, a great book to know by Admiral James Stockdale. But to get to that pressure cooker would take a while. And so I said, I said, how much am I going to learn in my next job here at Microsoft? A little bit, not too much. It's not much more. Actually, I think I had like, less decision authority, like even at the next level. I go, man, it would take me to get up there that's where the risk exposure really is. Sure, you can, I could not make my number. I had like 18 direct reports, a bunch of AEs running around like but I had a big chunk of the business, and I said, okay, yeah, let's go do it. Let's go figure it. Like, let's sink or swim. That I don't know how to do that. Let's do it. And that's kind of was our discussion. And so when I look back, and I don't really think about like the question you asked on myself, but when I look back, I'm like, I did that when I went to Hawaii. I sold my car and left. I wasn't thinking rationally. I'm not saying that I had the super rational, like, back for plan, but I thought about it, with going to the COO, but I certainly did that when I went to Hawaii. I, I, I did that when I decided just to bolt and go run around on a horseback in the mountains. Even going to school was something similar, right? Joining the military was something similar. Like, if I was to ask anybody at that time if they thought that it was rational and like a smart thing to do, I bet almost every single one of them would say every single one of my decisions was stupid. I mean, I look back, I'd probably tell myself that, you know what I mean? But so there is that, right? And it's not that I get bored. It's just I didn't even realize how good that decision was until after I made it. And I was not scared in the sense of like, oh, someone shooting at me in Afghanistan on the top of a mountain thing. Like, man, what am I walking into? Now I'm a VP at a big tech company as a COO, like even that, like, so I'll pause there. So I look back and to your point, I'm like, think about, there is a string of the continuity between some of that.
Yeah, I can see it. And I just think that's, it's interesting that you say a lot of people would look at those decisions and say, again, those are great decisions. And you're right. I think you're spot on. Right, that a lot of people would say that. But I also think that you've had a string of success there that speaks to, maybe there's something to thinking about this in a different way. Maybe that maybe there's something to like looking toward a decision with a challenge and seeing it as an opportunity. I think I don't know that there might be a correlation or a causation there. I'm not sure, but I think there's something to it. And I think it's really cool that you have that attribute,
right? I mean, and this is not me. I mean, there's like in decision making in life, right? Like we're in businesses, there's algorithmic like decision making, and then there's heuristical decision making, right? And we always want to go algorithmic, like a 1 and a 0, like here, like there's an answer, like a chessboard, even though there's literally like it's an insane number of moves you can make on a chessboard, like in the million, maybe billions. It's millions and millions. But it's algorithmic because it stays on a board, right? It's like the dimensions are the same, and so we want that. Like, if you go to school and you do this and you do this, it should equal this, right? There's like, we're taught that a lot in school. Go to school, get good grades, apply to colleges. When you're in college, go do your internship, junior year, get on, then, go to med school, apply to this, and it will equal this. We create equations, this very algorithmic way of success all the time, and it, because it feels good, because you could see the equation. And so heuristics is street smarts, right? It's not a chessboard anymore, right? When you go out in the world and you bump into things, there's no algorithmic decision-making process that will ever have more downside or more upside than heuristics, which is just street smarts, heuristical decision-making. So those 52 jobs I had, what I learned a lot, more than I even knew at the time, because I learned that you don't, like, if you want to succeed, two rules in life, right? In business, I have. Number one rule, don't be an asshole. Rule number two, when in doubt, refer back to rule number one. I was like 80% of them there, maybe 7, right? I mean, it's just the same thing. I think, and this is in every religious text out there. I think it's called rule, do unto others as you would do unto you. And sorry, I probably screwed that up. But if you're like, I don't believe in religion. Yeah, I don't believe that. Okay.
Still,
heuristics will teach you, like the school of hard knocks will teach you the same thing. Because if you walk down the street, like if you believe in that, and it's very algorithm, someone told me that this was what we should do, and I believe in that, and I'm going to do it. Like, you're going to be okay. But if you don't believe in that, you go out and you spit on some old lady walking down the street, or you tell someone to go blank themselves, or this or that, you will learn the consequence of that same phrase that is very algorithmic.
So true. Yeah.
It will be it could be painful, but you'll also understand it in a different way than just following a recipe. But the outcome is the same.
I wrote down over here, heuristics equals street smarts. I really like that. I really like that thought. I'm just going to leave that. I really like that. Okay. So thanks for following me down this little bit of an offshoot here, but we were originally kind of following your timeline. Where we left it on your timeline was that you were just going to Fort Benning, Georgia. And so now we're back. You're now put yourself back in your, 25-year-old mindset. How was it what you expected?
No, and yes. I remember, and the hardest thing was leaving. Like it was tough to leave a young family. Yeah, two young girls. That was tough. And and even though I thought I had prepared myself for that, like you just can't. I couldn't. But I showed up, and got on a bus when I flew into Atlanta, Georgia, and here I'm like, couple people around my age, but mostly you got like the wet behind the ears, kind of 18, 19, 20-year olds maybe, right? Where you all get on this giant bus, right, in Atlanta and drive down, to Columbus, Georgia, on to Fort Benning. And I'm like people are scared and stuff. And I'm like, okay, like, this is like, they're going to yell at us, right? They didn't kill any of us, right? Like, how scary can this be, right? And they played the game and blah, blah, blah. But like going through those initial process, right? It's just, it's painstaking. The worst part is that like time stopped because you can't, in organizations like the military, you move in a systematic way, and that is not at the speed that I like to move. Like, I wanted to hurry up and just get going, get into the, like, let's get going. Like, give me a Ranger assessment selection. Like, I want to tackle all these things. And so, I don't know if I've ever been depressed in my life, but probably like the first week, in MEPS, they call it, or not MEPS, like when you go and you get your shots, they shave your head, they do all that stuff, they yell at you, but you're not allowed to work out because they don't want to hurt anybody before they go to basic training. And I'm like, and you're stuck with all these people in these giant bays with bunk beds, and people are doing stupid stuff. And I'm just like, I'm like over there trying to do push-ups because I want to stay fit. I'm getting yelled at. I'm getting in trouble by the cadre for doing push-ups, right? Because no one's allowed to work out. Like, and I'm like really, I'm like, I think I made a bad decision. I don't think this is how the military is. Like, this, I can't stand this. So I remember sneaking out one night, and I was looking at the fence, right, and the barbed wire and stuff, and I'm like, I can get over this. I literally had a thought about going AWOL one night. I was like sneaking to a payphone that you weren't allowed to touch the phones. I snuck the payphone and tried to like call my wife at the time and my kids. Yeah, I was like, I can run out of here. I can get out of here. I'm like, I can get out of here. And I literally thought about it. And then I did some backwards induction. I'm like, well, what would be the outcome of that? And so that passed to, we went to basic training, did that. And then with basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia, straight into combat training in Fort Benning, Georgia. It was very interesting, because again, you quickly see that there's some engineered failure in there, right? So it's like, they want you to fail. Yeah. But there's also life is real in there too. Those drill sergeants have kids they go home to, they have families, they have things they're doing. And because I was a little bit older, I'm like, I started becoming friends with the cadre. So enough. Like, they weren't giving me any favors or anything like that. In fact, actually, it made it worse, I think, sometimes. But I made it through that. And as I came out, I was the honor graduate of our combat school, which kind of like blew me away. And great. But it was still, I'm like, did this really what it's all about, right? Like, running around and just, running in the morning, like singing these songs about, death destroyers and all this stuff that they do, right? But I learned how to play the game. Again, you sit up front, you smile, you wave, you ask questions 70%, right? Like, it's very similar. Do your stuff, keep your stuff together. You can start to see how to play the game. Got out of that, went to airborne school. I was airborne school. I was actually probably most concerned about jumping out of an airplane. Not that I was scared to do it, but I was just like, the way as screwed up as some of these humans, this system is, like, we're all jumping out of airplanes together, like in literally these I think they're T-100, like these old, the ones they were like essentially using in like World War II, like, and we graduated to bigger and better parachutes, right? And I'm like,
Sure.
This is a death trap with all these, like, I'll put it this way. There's some extremely smart people in the military, but there's also every flavor either direction too. So I'm like, I was more worried about like, oh my God, we're all jumping at airplanes together. Like this is going to be a complete shit show. Yeah. Um, and, and this was another really, it was a dumb thing, but like this almost changed my life. So airborne schools, and in the last week you have 5 jumps. You have 2 night jumps, like 1 combat jump at night, with 1 like slick jump with no gear, and then you do 3 during the day, like a mixture of those. And so I had done 3 day jumps and 1 night jump, or 2 night jumps, and I had 1 jump left. And in an airborne school, in all of the schools that you go through, you can't have like, they call it contraband, right? You can't have aspirin. You can't have anything like clean as a whistle. And they're just, totally get it. Well, the morning that we all had lined up for our last jump, like 4:00 in the morning, right? We're getting up, everyone's running and showering, getting their stuff ready. I'd gone and I thought I locked my locker. And what they do when you're in formation is like, they come in there and they check to see if all locked. Oh, quarters lock is undone. Like, let's get them. So they dump it and pull everything out and take all my bags. You have these the big green army bags, right? And at the bottom was a bottle of Centrum Silver. I'll never forget it, like those multivitamins.
Yeah.
And I had even forgotten that they were at the bottom of my bag, right? And so we're about to step off and go down to the airfield to do our last jump. And then I'm going right up, and my Ranger Assessment Selection class is going to start like 2 weeks later, right? So I'm like, I got 1 jump, going to selection. All of a sudden, I like the commander comes out and says, Porter, get up. Sorry, I run up there, and I go into his office, and all of my shit is on the floor in his office, and on his desk is the Centrum Silver, like from CVS, right? The $5.99 Centrum Silver for old guys, right? And I'm just looking at it, and I did like, at first, I wasn't computing what was happening, right? And I'm just gonna shut my mouth, because I've been in the military for a couple of weeks now. And they go like, you're being dropped from airborne school and you're going to be reassigned somewhere else. I literally like was holding back tears. I was 1 jump away. I'm going into selection, and since you have to have airborne wings to even get in the front door of selection for almost all special operations. Like you have to have your jump wings. Like it's a you can't come here without your airborne wings. And I'm like literally like devastated beyond anything I can even say here on this. And like, he's like, yeah, you really screwed up. Like you knew this was, I said, absolutely. I won't even make an excuse. I don't have excuses. And I said, I will do anything I can do to, if I can get back in the cycle, like it was a complete mistake on my side, and I understand the rules. And they're like, no, you are going to be tasked here at headquarters, airborne headquarters, with all of these, and I hate to say this, these rejects who are too afraid, or like shit their pants on the first run and they quit, and so I'm like here with like the island of misfit toys who are getting now sent to like Korea and stuff, and they're just waiting to get their orders to get out of there, right? And they're going to be like, your orders will be cut like in a week and a half, right? So report to the HR officer or whatever over there. And I'm just like, get your stuff, go to the fail kids like bunk.
That's so brutal.
And I'm just like, and I just was, I was, I look back and I'm laughing. I'm like going, you idiot. You know what I mean? Like that was totally 100% my fault. Like I'm like sneaking in Centrum Silver. But this is what was really interesting. So I reported over to the HR officer, and he's having me do dumb stuff like painting rocks and like cleaning classrooms and going through stuff. And as I'm sitting there, I'm like helping them get ready for, because now all my buddies who are going to selection, who are in the same cycle as I am, are going up, and they're just like looking at me, just going like, they're like trying to mouth things to me when they see me, and like sweeping in as everybody's getting ready to get their airborne wings and stuff, and I'm just like literally like trying to hold back, these tears, and as I'm sitting there helping the guy get ready, because I'm just like, you know what, I'm just gonna be helpful, and I'm watching them enter these things in. We're using like clipboards and cards and stuff. He's trying to enter it in on Excel. And I'm not, I said, I think that you could do this make your system a lot easier, right? I just got out of I've been doing, I didn't really get into I got in my MBA program because I hid that because all the enlisted, I don't know, stupid. Yeah, yeah, like it was just like, oh, here comes the professor or whatever. There's
Yeah.
all these things. You see it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
and and he goes, oh, really? Why don't you show me, Porter? But I've been I just got out of we were doing analytics in our MBA program. I was really at the time a lot sharper than the average military HR officer on systems and all this stuff. So I recreated their whole system within a day. Like like on Excel and we're using Excel back there and Access. I would created Access apps and all these things, and I'm not even that good at it, but it was very generic. And I literally fundamentally changed the whole way they did business from an intake and out processing perspective of the people coming in class. Simplify. And it was and I'm not even a brainiac. It's you have 10 steps. Okay, let's shorten this to 5. And let's do this. Right. And he was then he gave me the next task. Right. Then he gave me the next task. And yeah. And so now I'm helping them. I'm just telling him I said, you take credit for this. You're helping me help you. And that was the thing. So 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I saw my class go. My buddies are up there in the holding bay at Ranger selection. New classes in, and I'm supposed to be getting orders, and they're telling me I might go to Korea, which I can't even bring my family. And I go into office. The CEO calls me in and he goes, "Hey, listen, so and so kind of told me what you've been doing." He goes, "And you've made it like a huge change up here on how we're doing." And I'm talking you would laugh if you saw what I did. It was not some harebrained idea, right? It was just just tweaking some efficiencies into the system. And he goes, "Because of what you've done to help us out here, that's kind of changed the way we've done business. Tomorrow is the last day jump that you need. Jump, we'll stamp it, send you up to Ranger."
Whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's lucky.
Maybe maybe some luck was involved, but I mean, also there's, you didn't just, you made the best of the scenario that you were in and someone appreciated it. Yeah, sure. Some luck was involved, but I mean, that's really still a great story. And I mean,
and I caught back up to all my buddies. I caught back up to my buddies, right? They sat there in a holding bay for 2 weeks. I showed up and started what they call pre-rasp 2 days later. So I actually feel like I won.
That's wild.
Yeah,
wow.
I can't believe that was a rare thing to let someone back who had been kicked out of the course back in, finish one jump, and then send me on my way.
I mean, that I don't know anything about the military, but that seems like a pretty unique situation. I mean, that's really, really cool. Wow, man,
most people who know me, even in the military, don't even know these stories. Those stories, how close I was to not going. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about those, making a decision and having cutting off access to that nodal point. That $5.99 purchase could have ultimately been one of the most impactful things, in your life.
Wow, I wouldn't be. I probably I wouldn't be here today because
probably not.
At least not sitting here with you and not in the position. The world is, I'm not saying it's in this perfect path, but certainly this path probably would be sitting present in this path. Maybe even if I wouldn't have bought those and had them in my bag, or if I would have been shipped off somewhere else.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, you never know how that could have shaped out if you didn't buy them, they weren't in your bag, something totally different happens. That's incredible. You think about that, but that's a really good illustration of, sometimes those small decisions that turn into having a decent amount of impact down the road. You didn't know it at the time.
People at the time, I would consider it a failure.
Yeah.
But I actually think that failure turned out to be something that was even.
I mean, I know some failures are actually catastrophic, they're actually but I feel like the most things on the other side of them, there's some sort of there's growth, there's learning, there's something from them. Like you said, in your training, that there's this engineered failure where your training's designed to fail because you have to find out where that limit is for you. And so, all right. So you finish at Fort Benning, you go to, you use an acronym for the prep time, something RAS?
Pre-RASP.
Okay. Pre-RASP. So, and then, so you're in pre-RASP.
Yeah. 2 weeks before you go into Ranger Acceptance Selection Program. So if you take pre-RASP and you take RASP is 6 weeks long, 2 or 3 weeks. So you're talking 9 weeks of selection before you actually, which is But for the special operations pipelines is probably one of the shortest pipelines into a unit. Or there's other gates you have to hit once you're in, but it may be one of the, because you look at the SEAL training, right? I mean, it's like year and a half, almost 2 years. Like SF, like for Green Berets, very similar, right? Like, MARSOC and stuff. These are big, long programs. Like the thing that's very distinct about the Ranger Regiment is that, you take just the assessment selection aside. I mean, yes, in part of those other pipelines, right? You still have to go to combat school. You got to go to airborne school. So there's some of that element. So, but it's certainly, I would say, at least a year to 15 months shorter than other special operation pipelines to get into the unit. And because of the off tempo of the war at the time, right? You're thinking like war is raging in 2008, 2009. And so, I mean, you could go through selection and a ranger assessment selection, and then depending on what battalion you get, you could be in the middle of a firefight like 2 months later. It's crazy. It's crazy.
That is crazy. So I'm gonna repurpose a question that I already asked. So as you're sitting there pre-selection, you go into selection. I'll ask similar to that I asked before. Was it similar to what you had in mind, what you expected, or was it different, better, or worse?
There was anticipation and like maybe call it like the probability of failure was much higher. Like if you fail basic training, like I'll just leave it at that. Like basic training is like, yeah. I'm just people do, and I'm so I don't want to like shit on that, but like basic training it's called basic training for a reason. I mean, it's like run 2 miles, it's 50 push-ups, like it did like you got to be the hardest thing for me there. Was like doing the turns and the all the left face. Like I was terrible at that. I was like I can't dance either, man. I got I could play music. I can't sing. I can't dance. I can't do I can't do that kind of stuff either. But I got better at it through time. Yeah, so I got up there, and the anticipation was like high, and and because I through the whole thing, and I look back and like I like observed a lot what was happening around me, and it was really interesting to like watch the social psychology of the things humans in like about to go into this pressure cooker, right? Like you're about to jump into the fire. You see everyone has done their research. Like I did all the research I possibly could on RASP. I even like was trying to call people who I heard their dad was a ranger once, right? Like just try to. So everybody thinks they got a little bit of an idea, and they know, and the attrition rate was really high. It was like 70% attrition or something like that. The classes, right? And so it's like everybody knows. You look around you, and you're like, a lot of us are not going to make it through this, and the worst thing, so we're all sitting there, we're getting ready, and someone comes out and they go, hey, look at like Discovery Channel is going to follow your assessment and selection class through this for surviving the cut. Was like a series Discovery.
I remember that show.
Yeah, surviving the cut, and everyone's like, ooh, they're like, who wants to volunteer to be in the Hollywood platoon? Because they're going to follow that platoon. Everybody but like me and 3 people who I became friends with and still friends with this year, like, don't raise our hands. I'm like, you idiots, I mean, like, I'm like, why would you want that? Like, okay, let's just say you fail. Like now your family for the rest of the time has a failure diary of you.
That was my exact thought. I was like, if 70% of the people aren't making through here, like I wouldn't want to be on camera for that.
Yeah. And so I remember the next day they say, Porter Post, they run me up there like, they volunteer, like, you're going to be in the Hollywood platoon. I said, no, Sergeant, no. And they're like, you're saying no. So I'm like doing push-ups in front of this 250, like, because I'm telling them I don't want to be, because you have to sign an NDA. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. I'm doing push-ups. Like I'm refusing it. And essentially they take me in and they make me sign this NDA. Like it wasn't under duress or anything like that. Yeah. So they volunteer me like, you're going to sign. So I'm like FML, right? Like, oh, great. They want the old guy, for good TV. So I decided, and I ended up in this Hollywood platoon, which is even worse because for TV, they smoke that platoon harder than anybody else. They make you do dumber stuff. You got a camera in your face, and like that was like that like really like was annoying. But I went into selection, right? And like at that point, Ranger Assessment Selection Program is different than Ranger School. the way, because you're at least getting some sleep at night and you're getting 3 meals a day, right? Because they want you to be nourished and fed and all of those things to assess you on the tasks that they're giving you. Sure, we are doing lots of like rucking with backpacks on, timing stuff. People are failing out. You're going and, doing land navigation in the muddy rain in Georgia. People are essentially ringing the bell and, dropping out. And as we kind of started getting closer, and I got this stupid camera in my face the whole time, and I mean, I would get to the end of the program. Yeah. And I made it through. I was the actual honor graduate of our assessment selection program.
It's awesome.
Say that to pat myself on the back, but you could I certainly don't feel like I deserved it, but I came out of that one, as the honor graduate. And I think a lot of it just had to do, with what and I didn't realize that this was happening, but in the absence of leadership, they watch what happens. And I think it had more to do with the fact that I was a little bit older, right? It's like, what are we all going to sit here and stare at each other? Like, oh, because they killed off like the platoon leader who was in charge. Like, no. And so I'd be like, let's pick up the damn log and let's go. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to sit here forever, right? This is an engineer thing. Like that's how I would talk to people, right? Like, let's just get going. And I think the cadre is like, oh, or whatever, or like when you go to an island of pygmies, right? And you got to play basketball, you just pick the tallest pygmy. Yeah, and maybe that would be. I don't know. I'm not saying I would do that.
Well, regardless, someone else made that decision. It's worth noting.
Yeah,
I think it's cool.
I'm very, very proud of that, because to get through is one thing. To get one of the to get an honor like that, is even a smaller percentage. And I am not a proud person. I'm not I don't pat myself on the back for the things that I've done, because those are yesterday and you can't rest on your laurels. I've even written articles about that. What you did yesterday it can have some bearing on what you do today in the future. But if you use it to establish who you are now and in the future, you got to have a problem. Like if you identify with what you did yesterday, that's scary. It feeds into the knowledge loop of how you make decisions today, but it's not who you are today. I was that on the day it happened. I got the award, right? And it's not the end state. All that hard work in between the start and the end, that's where the real value is. It's not getting an award. Making it through is great, but that's not the end state. Is usually where the dopamine actually starts to go down when you actually end a goal or a task. I mean, this is physiologically proven.
Did you know that when you were in the middle of this? Because it's still really hard, right? And so when you're in the middle of this, did you already kind of have this knowledge that, look, this is where the real, this is what's happening right now is the real value. And it's not actually when I'm going to finish this thing in however long. Did you have that idea?
I didn't really I wasn't thinking that way at the time. I mean, I certainly when I look back, it wasn't long after that I started to view life like that, right? And it's why I have the obstacle is the way. It's Marcus Aurelius, the impediment to the way is often the way, right? Like the hard shit you do in life is actually way more meaningful than the end state of things out from that.
I think that's true. I fully believe that. There have been some easy times, if I look back, that are great, that I enjoy, that are good memories, but really the things that I really like are the challenging times. There's a lot of truth to that. I like that quote. All right. You finish selection and you're then you're moving on, then you're moving in. You mentioned, I think there are a couple other gates after that you have to go through. Do those happen directly after, or how do those?
Dog teams and all this other stuff. And so, I got to choose because I was honor graduate. I got to choose, right?
Nice.
And so I sat there, and that was a hard decision for me, because I'm like, I can go to Savannah and be on the beach, It's in Savannah. Savannah's awesome. I said, but I could also go to JBLM in Tacoma, and at least I'm on the same coast as my family, So, but I said, I'm going to go to 3rd Battalion, and people are like, why the hell would you stay here on the border of Alabama on the Chattahoochee River, and where it's hot, muggy, and buggy? And I thought, I don't know what life in Ranger Regiment is going to look like, because you get fenced in, you don't have to leave, right? Unlike most military, they're moved around every 2 to 3 years. As an enlisted person, you get fenced in. So people spend 20, 25 years on that same unit, on the same base, in the same neighborhood, right? And it's good for kids and stuff like that. There's a lot of stability. There's some cost, but there's also a lot of benefits to that too. And I chose that because I said, if the flagpole's here and all these auxiliary things that happen, my room for movement out or up is higher because there's just more jobs here. That's actually why I actually made that decision.
Makes sense. So, okay. So then you decide to stay, you decide to stay there. And are the platoons, are they only separated by geography, or the roles or jobs different within those?
Well, by GA, so yeah, like a Ranger battalion. So first, second, and third Ranger battalion has typically
Sorry.
companies. The battalions have 4 companies, and so I was Charlie Company, Seco 375, Charlie Company, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. So I was attached to, and within those, yes, you have like auxiliary jobs, right? Like you have the sniper platoons that are separate, they get attached to the different companies, right? You have people who work the dogs who get attached, and so you have all these different things, but the core element of Ranger Battalion, and you can look this stuff up online, so I'm not giving away any secrets, is like 3 fire teams and a weapons squad is a typical makeup of a platoon. And a company has typically like like 4 of those, 3 to 4. Right? It kind of differs a little bit where you go and stuff like that, but in general, right? It's pretty standard army and military makeup. Yeah, so I went in and they looked at me and they go, I went to Seco 375 and they look at me and they go, you seem like you can run and you can do some push-ups. We're going to make you the machine gunner on the weapons squad, which is the worst thing. That was the one thing I did not want, because when you're jumping out of airplanes, you got this giant machine gun, this 240 Bravo strapped to the side of you. Hike and ruck you do, going across the mountains in Afghanistan or training, you got this like a machine gun, like a big machine gun. It's got to be set up on a tripod and all this stuff. And I'm just like, oh my God.
How much does that thing weigh? Like ballpark?
Yeah, it was probably some laugh at me because it's roughly like 30 pounds.
But still, if you're, I mean,
without the base and the ammo and stuff like that, and like
that's a lot.
Yeah.
And 30 pounds, like 30 pounds is a lot by itself. But if you add it on top of what you're already carrying, like it's like, strapping. Yeah, that's a lot. So I was going to say, like, strapping a toddler to your back, like that's a lot, man.
But it was good though, because we ended up deploying, I think 6 months later. We went through a training cycle. I was deployed 6 months later because the next gates, right? So to stay as a combat arms, like what you call like an 11 Bravos is the coding for an infantry person in the enlisted corps of the Army. To stay in Ranger Regiment, you have to, I think it probably fluctuates, and I don't know what it is now, but like you needed to go to Ranger School within the first year. It's because you need your tab, because you get a scroll, and then the tab it's the premier leadership school of the Army. Like some people say the military, a lot of people disagree with that. Okay, I'm okay with that. And so you don't have to be in Ranger Regiment to go and get your tab. However, the most tabs of any graduating class are Ranger Regiment in totality, because you have to pass selection, and then you have to have your Ranger tab on top of that scroll to stay in as a combat arms, right? And so, yeah. So after my first deployment, I ended up going to Ranger School, and that was that was an experience in itself. It's so different than any of the other schools.
So I want to make sure I understand this properly. So you finish selection, you're deployed, then you come back, and then you go to Ranger School. That was, I mean,
some people go before, some people it all depends on the slots and things and timing. But the op tempo in Afghanistan at the time was high, right? And so like the cost to send me or people, and they do it, but the cost to send somebody to Ranger School and not be able to have that that human to be able to use as an asset overseas, you got to self-solve for that, And so some people go in the middle of a deployment, they'll send them back to Ranger School to prep for it. A lot of times, like people will get ready, the timing's all over the place because the classes are going. There's I think 9 Ranger School classes a year, maybe 10. So you pretty much every 6 to 8 weeks and there's 3 phases, right? So yeah, I got back from my first deployment, so I had a deployment under my badge. I had some of the things that come along with going on deployment and, getting in firefights and stuff like that. And so I had a little, I was definitely not like ooh, look me, I'm cool. Right. But I deployed, by the time
there's something to that, right? I mean, I'm guessing among your those that you're in the school with and learning with, like a level, kind of like you were talking about street smarts, like it's a different type. Tell me, I'm speaking totally as unexperienced here. So apologies if I'm way off, but it feels like there's like a little bit of that to it. Like I can understand the application of some of the things that we're talking about because I've seen this as it's being applied in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And Ranger School was there was a lot of pressure to get your tab, right? We call it a tab, like to get your tab in Ranger Regiment. Like there was a lot of internal pressure because if you number one, it's hard to rank up without a tab. In fact, your days are numbered. If you get kicked out of Ranger School, you might have it, like when I say kicked out, like you get no-goed out, might have another opportunity if your leadership to go back and try it one more time. But so then if you don't get through it, like it's like, you know, they call it RFS, like, and it's one of the great things about Ranger Regiment is that you can get released for standards, right? RFS, right? And the thing that's really separates Ranger Regiment from any of the other, special operation units is that every single person in Ranger Regiment, all 3,500, which is small when you break it up, right? Because in totality, like Green Berets have like 35,000. And someone's going to probably check my math on that. And that includes all of like the Green Berets. And then they have Maroon Berets, like who do the cooks, right? The logistics people, the people who work on the cars and stuff like that. They're from like the 82nd and they bring them into the special, this SF groups in the Green Berets. And so there's only a small portion of the people who are actually working, like even like the cooks and the HR clerks who are in there doing stuff, the supply clerks, like those aren't people who've gone through the Green Beret pipeline. Ranger Regiment, not a single human can come in, a cook or an HR clerk that hasn't gone through selection.
Wow.
It's a
That's pretty
huge
cool.
differentiating factor that we had a really hard time getting cooks and clerks who could make it through.
Yeah, I bet. That's wild. Okay, we got 8 minutes left here. No way we're going to finish the rest of this story. So I feel like we got to do a part two, man. What do you think?
I love it.